And we're live, halftime with Harmon here, talking the Week 3 early game action. It's been an action-packed situation so far. Let's go over some of the major news lines first. Two updates on running backs right now. One, Matt Breida suffered what looked like a lower body injury. 49ers running back. He was actually leading the NFL in rushing before today's game, which is mind-blowing in and of itself. Looks like he's going to be down for the count for a while. Obviously, no hard and fast news on what this injury is, but it is a situation to monitor. Alfred Morris, of course, would become the pseudo bell cow there, and actually probably give a little bit of a boost to Kyle Juszczyk, who also had a long reception today. He's kind of their main pass-catching guy, even though he is a fullback. He's been a dynamic weapon for that 49ers offense so far. So look for those two guys to get a boost if Breida is out. Obviously, the 49ers right now are involved in a game where we're seeing a lot of points. We're seeing a lot of points from the Chiefs side, and I think the 49ers are obviously going to have to take to the air to throw the ball and catch up in this contest. Now, the other major news is Phillip Lindsay was ejected from this game in Baltimore right now for trying to throw a punch, which is always weird to me. Why would you ever want to throw a punch on a guy wearing a helmet? You're just going to end up hurting your own hand. Phillip Lindsay obviously going to hurt fantasy owners who started him in this game. The Broncos did punch in an early rushing touchdown with Royce Freeman, and if Lindsay's out, he's going to be out for the rest of this game. So I think Royce Freeman and Devontae Booker are going to be the guys to target there, obviously, in the second half of this game at the running back position. So we're going to hop into the chat, and obviously our first major news cycle, this comment coming in from YouTube right now, the Bills 27-0 over the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. This, of course, is a big blow to anybody that threw the Vikings out there in their survivor pool. Shout out to my buddy Sam, who I told to play the Vikings. I think that was the right call. I mean, they were a 16.5-point favorite, but the Bills are really putting it on them right now. Throwing up just some of the scores from this contest right now, some of our live, who's hot right now. I mean, Josh Allen. Josh Allen is on fire. He's throwing a touchdown. He's hurdling defenders. The Bills' defense has 17 points right now in fantasy. It's just been a wild situation. We'll see what happens in the second half, but yeah, it's pretty insane what the Bills are doing right now in Minnesota over the Vikings. One of the best teams in the NFC, stacked on both offense and defense. The Bills are really shutting up the doubters, yours truly included. I think that this is something that, we'll see what happens in the second half, but a pretty wild situation so far. We will definitely monitor that. Also keep in mind they are without LaShawn McCoy today. You got Chris Ivory busted off a big play. Marcus Murphy is also another running back on that team to keep an eye on if the Bills offense continues to look good. Definitely, we have another question here about Adrian Peterson, who I want to touch on in the chat room right now, coming in from Periscope. Adrian Peterson right now has rushed for 2 touchdowns. He has 87 rushing yards against the Green Bay Packers defense that definitely has some vulnerabilities. I talked about this in my Week 3 preview, the fantasy power rankings, where I rank every single game for fantasy. I put this one up pretty high, the Green Bay Packers at Washington, and for the main reason being this defense in Green Bay had shown some vulnerabilities, and we've got the Washington offense right now is cooking against this rush defense that was giving up over 4 yards a carry, had allowed a decent amount of rushing yards to Jordan Howard in Week 1 before the Bears kind of went into the shell in the second half, and then in Week 2, we didn't really see Dalvin Cook get going all that much, but still in the secondary especially, there was a lot of vulnerabilities, and Adrian Peterson's really making good on a positive game script. I mean, this is what we really have to watch for with Adrian Peterson. He's going to be somebody that you consider every single week in home games and games where Washington looks like they can keep it competitive. Now, Washington was a 2.5-point dog at home coming to this contest, so I can understand why people necessarily didn't run Peterson out there with a ton of confidence. But this offense is definitely making it work, and it's great to see for Peterson. He's definitely still somebody that is on the fantasy radar every single week. I'm considering playing him every single week in this offense, but it is going to be dictated by matchup, which obviously was in favor with the Green Bay today, and game script, and the fact that the Packers are down heavy to Washington right now. That is the type of game script where Peterson is going to cook, so this is a solid bounce-back spot for him. I want to hit another question from the chat coming in from Periscope. How about Calvin Ridley? Yeah, how about Calvin Ridley? It's wild so far. If you actually look on our Yahoo top scorers page, Calvin Ridley is indeed the highest scoring player in fantasy football right now with over 30.8 points in PPR, 129 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. That is quite a thing to see for Ridley. You know, last week he came in and scored a touchdown. I wasn't willing to really buy into him yet because of the target distribution in the Atlanta offense. It's not necessarily there's not a ton of room open, especially with Julio Jones leading the NFL in percentage of targets and percentage of air yards in Atlanta's offense. It didn't appear to be a lot of room, but today Ridley's cooking against a secondary that has a lot of vulnerabilities. Obviously, Marshawn Lattimore is a good top coverage corner, even though he's given up some big plays so far in the early action of 2018. The other side of the field, Ken Crawley, had allowed 3 touchdowns coming into this game, so that definitely did put Ridley on the sleeper radar, kind of a deep play in DFS. I didn't necessarily roll him out there, so I understand if you guys are kind of getting killed with him on your bench right now, but these are just the type of players that you want to consider in big shootouts like this. So I don't know. This is definitely a situation where we'll be watching Ridley. We're probably going to be considering playing him going forward if this offense is rolling, as it does appear to be. The last 2 weeks have been really good signals coming out of that Atlanta offense after really kind of a dud week 1 against the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia on the season opener. I definitely want to go to a couple of our Yahoo Fantasy tweets. Remember, you can follow us at Yahoo Fantasy right now, and I want to hit on one pretty crazy one. Really early in the game, Jordy Nelson was up to 139 yards and a touchdown on 3 catches. He's been cooking against this Dolphins defense. You know, I threw the gif up there from Jumanji. What year is this? It is one of my favorite gifs in terms of the arsenal we have of all the gifs in the internet. I really like Jordy Nelson in this Raiders offense, actually. I was into him coming into this year because he was so cheap in drafts. Didn't really get much out of it the first 2 weeks, but we've seen Derek Carr more willing to go downfield. Jordy Nelson has seemed to make the most of some busted coverage plays here. And yeah, I think this Dolphins defense, while they will look really good coming into this game after two starts in week 1 and week 2 where they're 2-0, undefeated, leading the AFC East actually since the Patriots dropped that game in Jacksonville, which I didn't expect to hold up. This defense definitely has a lot of holes. I like top coverage corner Xavier Howard. He's a good press man defender who really showed out to the end of the 2017 season and has looked pretty good in his early action in 2018. But the rest of this defense has a lot of holes. They don't have a big-time pass rushers. They do not have a great run defense, even though they showed out well. I'm still targeting this Miami defense. I think that's what we've learned today. And by the way, the people in the chat who are saying it's pronounced GIF, it's GIF. They're GIFs. I don't care who says otherwise. It's GIF. And if you think that I'm wrong, how dare you? You can at me, at @MattHarmon_BYB, and tell me that I'm wrong, and I will just respond with the fact that it's GIF. It's not GIF. Please. So got a question in the chat from Facebook. Ryan on Facebook asks, what do I think about, I think he tried to say Wentz, but he said went in. I'm going to assume he said Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz has looked good so far. I think he's looking comfortable, which is great to see. This Eagles offense was one of the most disappointing units through the first 2 weeks. I think they were pretty much ready to say to Nick Foles, hey, thank you for your service. Here's a pat on the back. Let's bring our franchise quarterback back in. Even if it was a little early for Wentz to be out there, I did think that this was a good sign to see him. Nelson Aguilar hasn't made a big play yet today, but Zach Ertz is out there. Dallas Goedert, the really talented second tight end who's somebody to monitor. He slipped to the Eagles so late in the second round. They actually made a move to get up for him. I really like that pickup. I don't think he's going to have a ton of fantasy viability this year, but he did make the big play today with the touchdown. Corey Clement is out there looking good. So I think this Eagles offense is getting a big boost here with Carson Wentz, obviously. I mean, this is a unit that needed it, and defensively they haven't looked all that good. I want to go to another one of our tweets today highlighting Kareem Hunt with a great GIF of Leo DiCaprio with the suck it here, and that is everyone who didn't give up on Kareem Hunt after a slow start. They're giving that suck it message to the people who did because, man, Kareem Hunt has 2 touchdowns today so far, scored them very early. You do not give up on running backs in good offenses, and the Pat Mahomes-led offense is one of the best in the entire NFL right now. They're looking great today, up 35-7 over the San Francisco 49ers. That game still has a shot to hit the over, even if the 49ers don't cooperate so much here. But, it's only the second. It's the second half hasn't even begun yet. The first half is still going on, about 4 seconds left, and the Chiefs have 35 points. That's unbelievable. You do not give up on running backs in offenses like that. And Kareem Hunt is the epitome of that today. It's just a lesson that no matter how things go, the slow starts, whatever, you don't give up on running backs with this type of touchdown potential. And Kareem Hunt scored you 2 early, so you're happy about that. If you bought him earlier this week, that is a big-time win for you for sure. Let's jump over to some of the top scorers again. I want to hit on some of the players who are showing out so far. He has 6 carries for 15 yards. Give me a break. Who cares? He's got 2 touchdowns. I don't know if you know this, but touchdowns matter in fantasy football. Kenny Stills scored another touchdown today. He has 61 receiving yards in that big touchdown reception. Had a bit of a slow week 2 against a Jets secondary that does have some good perimeter corners in Trumaine Johnson and Morris Claiborne, but Stills is a guy I expect to continue to lead the Dolphins in air yards and targets, all the important opportunity measures for this game. So, yeah, I like Kenny Stills going forward. Want to actually double back on a couple of news items before the game's kicked off, and let's talk about Cleveland. Do you guys have any opinion on the Cleveland Browns going forward now that it looks like we're going to get Baker Mayfield as the starter? To me, I think Baker Mayfield is going to rise all the ships in this offense. He's going to be the rising tide that raises all boats here. Because if you just watch the early goings of the Browns in weeks 1 and week 2, and even as Tyrod Taylor was out there at the early part of week 3, look, I'm a Tyrod Taylor guy. I'm a big fan of his since he came into the NFL. Before he was even the Bills starter, I followed him from Virginia Tech. My sister and her husband went to school there, so I've been following his career for a long time. I am a Tyrod guy. And at the same time, it was clear that a change needed to be made. The offense that they were running was based on a lot of spread concepts, precision passing. That's just not really Tyrod's game. You don't drop him back to pass as many times as he was being dropped back there. You do not use him as that type of passer. You use him almost more as like an extension of your running game. And this offense looked like it was suited for Baker Mayfield, and as soon as he dropped in there, they started cooking. The Browns got their first win. That was a real fun night on social media for sure. Yeah, so I think that guys like Antonio Callaway, Rashard Higgins, who might not have been picked up yet, even David Njoku, people are starting to lose patience with. I think they all get a boost from Baker Mayfield being the starting quarterback, and I think Baker's worth picking up too. I think they get the Raiders next week. That's a pretty soft landing spot for Baker to get in his first official start at the NFL level. I'm excited about this Browns offense going forward. One other thing to note, too, Le'Veon Bell, there were rumors this morning that the Steelers are finally listening to trade offers. I think it's going to be tough to get a deal done because whichever team deals for Le'Veon Bell runs the risk that he ends up being a rental because you can't extend him yet with him still being on the franchise tag deadline. So I do think that you worry about Le'Veon Bell. He's not going to come back till week 10 if he stays with the Steelers. Now, if he gets traded, a couple teams I'd look at there are Indianapolis. I'd look at San Francisco. They just lost Matt Breida. Obviously, I think they could conceivably they have a ton of cap room. That's the thing. You're going to have a team that has a lot of cap room because he's sitting on that $14.5 million tag. So that's why I really like San Francisco to be a team that inquires. Tampa Bay also could do it. These teams with the big-time cap figures have some draft picks to spare. I definitely think that you should be hoping that Le'Veon Bell does get traded if you own him in fantasy, because if you do own him and he stays with the Steelers, he's not coming back till week 10, man, because what would be the point in that? Now, going to start to just wrap up the show. I love that people are definitely tilting about the Vikings in the chat. Remember, you can watch this show during the second half of the late games as well, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 3 p.m. Pacific. We'll recap the Vikings game, obviously, after it's over, but it looks like a lot of people are already willing to accept that they're going to lose their survival pick. I agree. It has been a brutal situation there, but it's great to see for the Bills. I mean, the Bills fans are very passionate. They were a little outrageous this offseason, but it's good to see them getting a win there, most likely in Minnesota, or at least looking good. We'll see what happens in the second half. So that's all for now. This is our 15 minutes with Halftime with Harmon. Hope you enjoyed tuning in, breaking down some of the most current news of what's going on in the Week 3 early game action. We will be back, as I mentioned, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific to recap the late game halftime action. And, of course, we'll touch on some of what's going on right now as the games conclude. So you can follow this show. You can stream us on Twitter at Yahoo Fantasy. You can like us on Facebook, Yahoo Sports Fantasy. And you can also follow the show on YouTube and Twitch, the Yahoo Sports page on YouTube and the Halftime with Harmon page on Twitch. Really jump in the chat. interact with us. I'm seeing people right now actually just give us an update. Matt Breida might be jogging on the sideline. So I'm looking forward to jumping back into the games, and I'm looking forward to talking with you guys later. Remember, I'm Matt Harmon at @MattHarmon_BYB. If you want to continue the conversation after we get offline here, I will chat with you guys on Twitter, so feel free to jump in. And that's all for now. Thanks for hanging out.